Last week, I reacted to a video of parents that regretted having kids. This week, it's only fair if I react to a video of child-free people who have regrets.
Older couples that decided to not have children. How do you feel about your decision now that years have passed? Been married for 21 years and initially we tried to have kids but found out that it was going to be hard to do. Wife was heartbroken at first, but I was somewhat relieved. It's a lot of responsibility and your life changes to accommodate a child. Over the years, wife has actually said a few times that she was glad we didn't have kids because we couldn't have had the adventures we did. I feel like it was the right choice and we're better off due to not having kids.
I feel like people always say that you're really missing out on life when you don't have kids, but you have all sorts of other adventures, and maybe some of those adventures are things that you would miss out on if you did have kids. I think you get adventures both ways. You get adventures if you decide to have kids, that's a massive adventure, but I also think you have adventures when you're child-free that are going to be different. Welcome to Wife Without Kids, I'm Hannah. This channel is all about supporting people like you who have made the choice to live the child-free life.
I'm old enough and I have 100% accepted that I won't have kids, plus my partner and I don't really want them. My whole life I wanted a big family because I had lots of siblings and we had a cozy happy childhood, so accepting that it wasn't the path my life was going down honestly wasn't easy. My turning point came when I realized that I was judging my success as a woman on whether or not I had kids. Society says oh have kids, and everyone expects you to, and everyone you know has kids and they seem happy and content, and probably are.
I think a lot of families probably are happy and content, but not all of them are, as my video last week clearly pointed out. Yes, society tells us that you have to have kids, but you know what? You don't have to have kids. That's the beauty of being an adult. You get to make your own decision, regardless of what society tells you.
So for me it was what's so wrong with me that I can't have what I want and why does everyone else get to have it, even people who don't want kids? It seemed unfair and I was angry about it and I've done a lot of crying and soul searching over the years, but eventually I grasped that just because my life was going to be different than I expected didn't mean that it wouldn't be as happy, if not happier, than if I'd had kids. And I'm very big on acceptance overall, the concept that just because one path is blocked for you doesn't mean that's a bad thing.
From the way this is written, I'm going to make the assumption that she probably couldn't have kids even though she wanted kids. And I imagine that's going to make it a little bit harder because if you have that desire, but physically or for whatever reason you're not able to have kids, that's really tough to accept. I love that she did come to the place though where she did start accepting that, hey, life can still be amazing even if I can't have kids. There's still a lot of good stuff that life has to offer.
Maybe I wouldn't have been happy having kids. I always assumed I'd be happy. But who really knows where life will go? Maybe I would have had a medical issue that would have been life-threatening or life-altering. Maybe I would have died giving birth. Plus, I wouldn't have met my current partner if I'd had kids, and I'm so blissfully happy with him that I wouldn't trade life with him for anything in the world.
I wouldn't trade my Michael for anything in the world, that's for sure.
I look back on all of the things that I so badly wanted in my past, and a good chunk of those things I'm so glad I didn't get because it would have drastically changed my life and I wouldn't be where I am today.
I like how this individual looks at life. When something doesn't happen and there's a roadblock, it's just meant to be. And whether or not you understand it, you can realize that if you had gotten what you really wanted, there are other things in life that you wouldn't have gotten that have actually made you happy. And I can definitely relate to that, not where kids are concerned because I've never wanted children.
I can't go back in time and have kids. I can't redo my past at all. I much prefer to make peace with it and keep looking forward so that it doesn't negatively affect my present and future happiness by swallowing me whole. The alternative is to live in a constant state of grief and regret and sadness and helplessness, so I don't care if people think my viewpoints are stupid. They have brought me a peace and comfort that I was missing for years and years.
I actually think her viewpoint on life sounds really healthy. Who wants to live in like misery and sadness over things that you don't often have control over? That doesn't sound like a very fun life. I think she sounds like she's been able to deal with it in a way that's healthy and that has let her see the other good things that have happened in her life.
That being said, mourning the loss of what you wanted out of life is perfectly fine and therapeutic and necessary. Don't shortchange yourself there. I mourn it still sometimes when my siblings announce their new pregnancies or send pics of their new babies, because it still stings sometimes even though I'm happy for them. Please understand that your self-worth and self-identity isn't dependent on something like having kids. There is much more to you than that.
Yep. Self-worth and self-identity is not based on whether or not you have kids. It doesn't determine your value. I absolutely love that line. That is what I'm trying to let people know who feel bad about the fact that they either can't have kids or that they're not going to have kids.
Also, I volunteer as an advocate for abused and neglected kids, and I know I couldn't spend the time doing that if I had kids of my own. So I'm content knowing that perhaps my purpose in life was just different than having my own kids.
When you don't have kids, you often hear, well, you're not giving back to society because you're not procreating and having children. This is a prime example of how a child-free individual can give back to the community in a different way than having kids, and this is not less valuable at all. The volunteer work that she does is really important and obviously will benefit a lot of people.
For my spouse, I can only say that they have physical and psychological issues that they've mentioned that they'd rather not pass on to a child. For myself, I've always said that while I'm occasionally afraid that someday I might regret not having children, that's not the same as wanting children, and that's an important difference to me. I have my own reasons to believe I'd probably not be a good parent. But yeah, we both get concerned sometimes whether anyone will be asked to care about the sole survivor once the other's gone or incapacitated.
There are people that know that physically and psychologically they wouldn't be good parents, and I think it's actually a very responsible and selfless, not selfish, a selfless decision to say, hey, as much as I might want children, I don't think I'd be the right kind of parent for my child. And I have a lot of respect for people that can look at themselves and make that decision about themselves, even if they may have a little bit of regret sometime in the future.
I go back and forth. My partner has some significant mental health issues, and I know that I would be alone doing much of the emotional labor of raising a child, and I know I'm not really capable of doing it alone. Sometimes I worry very much about what I will do when I am old. I'm an introvert and don't have many friends and am not overly likable, so I assume I will be alone. I just hope that there are some kind robots to take care of me, and that I'll die before the robots turn on us.
Okay, just because you're an introvert, I mean, I don't know this person at all, but just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you're not likable. But I guess they maybe don't think that they're likable. Having two parents to take care of a child emotionally and physically is probably what is absolutely ideal. And there are a lot of circumstances that happen when there is only one parent to take care of a child. So knowing that your partner would not be able to help you raise a child, and you know that you wouldn't be able to handle doing that on your own, again, a responsible choice to decide not to have kids. As for robots taking care of us in the future, I mean, 2021, our world is in a crazy place. Anything is possible at this point, right?
I go through phases where I regret not having a kid. I still have plenty of time. My wife and I are 36, but we made the decision to be childless a decade ago, maybe more. I understand the appeal of having children and feel it on some primal level, but logically the pros versus cons of having a kid. There are just far too many cons.
Most of us obviously make decisions based on emotion, and I don't think that emotion shouldn't play a role at all when we make decisions. But when it comes to something like having kids, I think it has to be reality as well, not just the emotional pull of being a parent. And when you look at the pros and cons, it's almost like that's more the reality of, okay, can we afford kids? How much will our lifestyle change? Is this really what we want? And are we equipped to be able to make that decision?
Mid-40s couple. We feel regrets, lots of regrets. However, we are somewhat a special case, and might still have a shot. We are past the normal age of having a child, but we froze our gametes ages ago, just in case we changed our mind about not having children.
That is absolutely an option. It's not something that people talk about too much. Yeah, you can get stuff frozen if you decide that maybe in the future you might want to have kids, and that might be really smart for people who are really on the fence about whether or not they want to have children. I was asked if I froze my eggs. Nope, did not.
For us, the decision not to have kids was more practical than ideological. At the time, we both had chronically ill family members that required a lot of our time and, more importantly, mental energy. The idea of throwing a kid in the mix seemed unpleasant and unfair all around. Also, neither of us had much desire to have kids. We just enjoyed each other's company, and that was more than enough back then.
This is a bit of a special case because when you're taking care of other people, that can be very taxing, and so adding a kid to the mix probably wouldn't have been ideal for them.
Having kids seemed like a hugely stressful experience even in the best of circumstances, and we could easily sidestep it, so why not? I was the type of person who loved kids. I adore all my nephews, as long as I could give them back to their parents after some time.
Very true.
I am a geneticist, and the full reason I thought we should freeze our gametes was that I thought, if we did ever decide to have kids, even while we can still do it naturally but we are older. Things are really different now since we made that decision not to have kids all those years ago. We have fewer responsibilities and our financial situation is great. We've had the chance to live and travel all over the world, live for our careers, and spend years and years in just the company of each other.
Life definitely does change. Sometimes when we make these decisions, we're in our teens or maybe we're in our 20s. And then 20 years down the road, careers can be more established. We're in a better place financially. So you do find yourself in a different situation. So it makes sense that you might regret it because you think, okay, well now we could do it, but is that still a possibility?
I feel like we got all we can out of being child-free, and we feel a longing to have a family of our own, meaning a family of more than just us two. So, now we feel a lot of regrets about not having a kid at all and not doing it when we were younger. Old as we are, we will likely now go back to our egg and spermicles and give it a go if our doctor says it's okay.
That line that they feel like they've gotten everything they can out of child-free life, I've never heard anyone say that before, so that's interesting. It makes sense why they didn't want to have kids in their 20s, and now in their 40s, obviously, they're in a really different place. And hopefully with the freezing of their specimens that they did, I really hope that they are able to have a child, because it sounds like that's really what they want.
The funny thing is, I think my answer might be completely different if we were in the same situation now but didn't have the gametes available. When what's done is done and can't be reversed, I think it's natural to just want to look at the brighter side of things, particularly when it's a mistake you can't learn much from.
And I think that goes back to when you're in a certain situation in life, you're going to make a certain decision based on what you're experiencing in life and what you're going through right at that time. But life doesn't stay the same, it definitely changes. And 20 years later, you can be in a completely different place and change your mind, which is very allowable. And I think that is common with people. There are a lot of people that do change their minds, and that is something that we have the luxury of doing.
I wanted them but never met the right person. I'm really glad I didn't have any of my previous partners. They would either have made terrible mothers or we just did not make for a healthy couple. I have the perfect partner now, and she did fall pregnant, but we lost the baby to Dandy Walker syndrome. Getting a bit too old to try again now. I am very upset that I will not have children, but I don't regret not having children with anyone but my current partner.
Oh, that's so sad. Oh man, I feel so bad when that happens to people when they want babies and then something horrible like that happens.
My wife and I have been married for 12 years. I am 36 and she is 40, so, yeah, likely not in the cards. It is a reality that, while tough, I am slowly learning to accept. I realize that as a guy, I always look at having kids with rose-colored glasses, ball games, working on my classic car with them, dad jokes, the fun stuff. That's easy for me as it's not my body and sacrifice. My wife is not on board and it's her body, and I love and respect her too much to force her hand. If either one of us are not 100% okay with a major decision, we don't do it, end of discussion. I look forward to spoiling my nieces and nephews and spending more time with my wife and continuing to make our world about us, forever.
I think that is such a responsible and respectful way of looking at the decision. If both of you aren't 100% on board, it just doesn't happen. And you don't often hear guys say, okay, you know what, yeah, it's her body and she's got to go through the tough stuff and she's not on board. That's cool, we're not going to do it. Because forcing someone into having kids is probably just not going to end well. And it's really unfair to the kid. If you missed my video last week where I reacted to parents that regretted having kids, go ahead and check it out right here. It was pretty interesting.